Okay. Welcome everyone. I'm super excited to introduce to this workshop today. For those who don't know me, my name is Victor Munoz, and I'm a developer advocate at Fleur Networks. And the idea of today's session is to introduce you to X402 on Fleur Network and to show you a basic flow in which you can kind of mix a few things. X402 is payment protocol that is native to HTTP. Then you will have agents which are, as we will see, naturally well fitted to interact with this protocol. And of course, you have to have some sort of settlement. And I think that Flare is a perfect blockchain rail for this type of interactions. So we're going to show you why and how. And you are also going to learn how this full flow is made um, gasless for the user. That means that a user will simply click sign on a transaction instead of just paying gas fees. You will have a service that will take care of that. And so we're going to also comment a little bit on everything that's going on with AI, such that you will be capable of implementing this type of flow in production. And hopefully, you can mix this up with other tools, right? And other building blocks that we have at Flare Networks. That is the entire purpose of today's workshop. And just a little bit of cleaning up the house, I guess. um we have people watching on X, we have people watching on LinkedIn, and we have people watching on YouTube. So what I'm going to ask is that if you have any questions, feel free to post those on these platforms, and I will try to check it out during the live stream, so that hopefully by the end I can answer those. If not, I'm going to show you some channels that we always have available so that you can join, participate, ask any questions, and start building on Flare. With the advancement of AI, it's getting quite more easy to build on any blockchain, really. And so let's get started. Let me move forward here. So a little bit of extra context if this is the first time that you are hearing about Flirt Network, which is an L1 EVM compatible blockchain. Um, and as soon as you start exploring the ecosystem, you will probably understand that Flare is all about connecting liquidity and data. Why? Because on one side we had built enshrined oracles into the network, so you're not relying on external parties. The two examples that we have here are the FDSO or Flare Time Series Oracle and the FDC or Flare Data Connector. The Flare Data Connector takes care of bringing verified data and actions from other blockchains and also from Web2 sources. And then, you can verify that on chain and then trigger some sort of action or logic. So it's a pretty powerful data protocol. And then if you need price feeds, you would rely essentially on the FTSO or Flare time series Oracle. And that's not all, right? What you can do with these data protocols that are very powerful is to build solutions that are interoperable. And the main one for us is a system called FXRP, which is, as the slide points out, a trustless, over collateralized bridge, essentially. So you would have assets such as XRP that can be minted on Flare, and we call it FXRP. And this is a one-on-one representation for this asset that is coming from a non-native, let's say, smart contract platform, right? So you can have liquidity from these other assets on Flare and access EVM DeFi, which I think is quite powerful. And in the future, we will also be adding TEEs and private compute, and this is going to enable new use cases that will build on top of these protocols. But anyway, for today, I want to give you a quick introduction first about everything related to AI, the things that are happening on Flare right now with AI. And of course, I want to invite you to stay connected, follow our developer account on X, and make sure to join our Telegram. If you're like building already, we have a Telegram exclusively for builders. And by the end of today's stream, we're gonna share a QR code in which you can answer some simple questions that are going to be derived or answered really during this workshop, and then you can earn some very exclusive merch. So I recommend you to stay tuned, stay until the end, and share this with your friends and other developers. Now, what are we going to do today? I am going to show you a very simple flow that will illustrate how autonomous clients pay for these HTTP endpoints and can settle with the off-chain signatures, and everything is verified on chain, right? Um, so you would have a sort of request in which an agent calls a protected HTTP endpoint. The idea here is that you can have all sorts of content that you have to pay to access, and how you would do this natively with this HTTP request. So you would have a challenge response in which the server will return the payment requirements. And then you would have the process of signing and paying, and in which the client creates this sign and payment payload. And we will discuss what is the IP behind and the main function. We have discussed this in the past, so today we're going to actually integrate this in the flow. And for the users, this is going to be gasless, right? So the whole idea is that if you're building on a blockchain like Flare that is fast and extremely cheap, you can certainly think about sponsoring some of these transactions for your clients so that you make the experience of the users, well, in this case, actually of the agent, to be very smooth. And of course, you can add that, costs on a fee related to, for instance, the payment that is going to be required, right? So it's not like from the point of view of a developer, you're losing money. It's just you're facilitating something, you're offering a service on top. And then you will have this sort of autonomous client, which is this agent, and then by the end, you will have a backend that will verify the signature, the chain state, and then serve the response once the payment has been verified. And the key question here is, why do agents actually matter on this entire thing? Um, and the idea is that once payments are just HTTP, then software can buy data and tools on demand without having any human clicking, right? So you wouldn't have any need to sign in with your Google account or anything like that. You will probably just have your agent do this stuff from you. Of course, you will be the person in charge of providing what is it that you want, and then your agent will take care of everything. And right now, this might sound a little bit futuristic, perhaps, but trust me, it is not when it comes to micropayments. We're going to discuss that within a few more minutes, but essentially, this kind of a payment solution is the one that is superior in terms of technology, specifically for micropayments. So think about e-commerce and all that. This is where things are gonna go, and you want to make sure that you stay on top of these trends. And after today's workshop, in which we're gonna show you this entire flow, you are probably going to be in a good position to build your own service, even if you're not, an expert software engineer, because right now, with the help of AI tools and these flows that we are providing from Flare, it is extremely easy to get started and then add new features on top or adjust part of these flows for your specific solutions. So one thing that I also want to clarify is the concept of autonomous agents, because we do have a lot of confusion, and perhaps you will even have seen this before, in which people use the term agents when they are referring to bots, and it can get a little bit confusing. But the entire point of an agent is that it can perceive. So in this context, the agent can read this HTTP response, the payment requirements, the chain state logs, and the quotes, right? Everything associated to this flow, the agent would be in principle able to perceive it. It can decide, right? Uh, Pick what is the next action based on certain policy or tool of choice, select the payment options, set limits, and whatnot. And it can act, right? So it could, in principle, sign, pay, call contracts, retire, read some sort of request, or record the outcome for, whatever compliance for, or whatever that is needed, whatever thing that is needed. Um, Now, like I mentioned, an agent is, you can think about it as a software that can perceive, decide, and act repeatedly towards specific goal. Um, and why is this a big deal? In the sense of having X402 and agents playing together, is because, like the slide points out, payments become, some sort of more composable, like out headers, right? So you wouldn't need to have a user interface with that checkout. It can work with automated clients, obviously, and you can enable paper request services that can be much more effective than current flows that you might find on e-commerce, for instance. And so, again, what we're going to show you is an entire flow with just a few command lines, very easy to reproduce and get started within a few minutes. And this is something that is ready for anyone, meaning developers that are just getting started or someone that is more experienced. So today I'm going to be sharing how this flow works, and how you can leverage this depending on what is your stage, right? Okay, there are two things that I see our community, our developers, and our users getting really excited about. And so I just wanted to ensure that before we move into the entire flow that we are going to be um, exploring today, that we clarify two things, specifically in regards to some of the releases that Flare has provided related to AI. So the first one is this GitHub repository, Flare AI skills, that you can easily find on the GitHub page of the Flare Foundation. And the way to think about this is just a lightweight way to make cloud code, which is, arguably the main tool for by coders and also for professional developers at this stage, and make it Flirt native so that you have the correct workflows, contracts, and references. Right now, we have three main skills. Four, actually. I need to update this because we just added the Flirt 10 series Oracle. But we do have for the FTC, with the different types of attestations. We have a skill for facets, with all these mint and redeem flows, what to do with the agents and the collaterals, and Flare Smart Accounts, which is a very powerful tool to have your account abstraction style user interface for users on the XRP layer. So the way you want to use this is when you're going to start building on Flare, you don't want to go and ask ChatGPT to tell you what to do or what is the right Flare contract for whatever, right? You want to utilize these skills that already have all the necessary information, all the necessary context, so that you can start building your solution fast, but in a reliable way, right? Remember, LLMs have hallucinations. There are security protocols that are needed. There are specific functions that you want to utilize when you are building on Flare. And for all of these, we have published these GitHub Flare AI skills, and you want to check this out regardless of whether you're just getting started or are experienced, right? And of course, you can fork it, leave suggestions, make a PR. We will be there trying to improve this because we see a lot of traction already and many people are asking about it. Now, this is not something that we are going to be utilizing today. We will very likely have a dedicated session on this very soon, so stay tuned. But I just wanted to clarify this. And the next thing actually is what happens with the Flare AI kit. For those who have been around for a while, you guys already know that Flare built an SDK when it comes to dealing with agents that can run in TEEs, in trusted execution environments, and prove this execution, right? So the correct repo for this implementation and SDK would be the Flare AI kit on the Flare Foundation GitHub page. And the main goal here is not like Flare AI skills, which is for, building on Flare and having the right context, right? This is more focused on having verifiable execution from these agents, and you can have flows with more multiple agents. And you have, of course, integrations that are native to Flare with the FTSO and FTC and F assets. And perhaps something that is of interest for some of you that are, playing with bots, automated bots and agents and all of that on social media. There are also some social connectors that you can plug in. But I just want to emphasize that none of these things are being utilized on today's flow, mostly because we just want to keep it simple. And as you can see, already has a few ingredients. But of course, you can play with both of these and combine them and create powerful solutions that also incorporate these X402 payments flow. Um, so yeah, now we're gonna get right into the details of X402. So this is an internet native payment protocol. This is not a blockchain payment protocol. It is native to the internet, right? And this open protocol and standard uses HTTP X402, which is the payment required status code to enable immediate and automated payments for APIs, or it can be web content. So you would have a user, which in this flow is going to be typically an agent, required to access some endpoint and information, and then as a response, you will have an X402 payment requirement. And it's fairly simple. It was created by a group of developers, Coinbase, if I'm not mistaken. And with one line of code, you can require this payment for each incoming request. So it's like very simple to implement in any sort of application. And if a request arrives without the payment, like I mentioned, the server will respond with HTTP 402, and it will prompt the client to pay and retry, right? And in this case, we're thinking about the client as an agent that is trying to access some, private content or endpoint. Okay, now one very important thing to consider in this type of flows is the role of a facilitator, because in practice, of course, all of these payments, they have to settle one way or another. And like I mentioned before, this does not necessarily need to be a blockchain. but of course, it is the most useful thing to do. And specifically, if you're dealing with payments on Flare, you want to create solutions for payments on Flare, you will have access to all the tooling. So, it can be pretty powerful. And you want to make sure that you have some sort of service that sits between your app and the blockchain, because you can actually have multiple blockchains to settle the payment, to verify the X402 payment proof and handle the settlement, right? That's the main idea. So that you have a clean process here, and things are more easy to implement, more the logic can feel like more clear. And what you would have here is, we're gonna go over this flow actually more than one time, but you would have an initial request, then you would have the X402 quote, right, in which the server returns the X402 with the price plus whatever token and payment address details that is needed. And of course, you will have the paid retry. And then you would forward this to this facilitator, which is a server that sends the signed payment payload to this X402, so that the next step is to verify and settle. The facilitator will validate the payment and settle this on chain. And again, this does not necessarily needs to be on chain, but it's just the most effective way, and you can do this in multiple blockchains. Of course, you then have the on-chain confirmation, payment confirmed, and then the facilitator would return this verification success status back to your server. And finally, the server returns the requested data and server or service to the client. That's the entire flow. It is worth it that you spend some time digesting this, because this is probably the most important part. As you will see, the technical part for X402, and even for the blockchain part and the gasless transactions that we're going to explore next, is, it's something that you already have all the templates, and with the help of Cursor or other AI assisted uh, developer tools, fairly straightforward to implement. Now, I want to talk about meta transactions. Why? Because, like I mentioned before, all of this is likely going to be for agents, and you want to ensure that things run smoothly and easy. And if you have clients, human clients, you want to make the experience good for them as well. And meta transactions or gasless transactions is the main way to do this. And of course, on Flare, it's it's highly encouraged, because transactions are just a fraction of a cent, and they take like almost nothing to settle. It's like very fast and cheap, right? Um, the idea of meta transactions is to separate the authorization of an action by the user from its execution, right? So in this flow, you would let users sign off-chain messages, and then you would have a backend service or a relayer that will submit the on-chain transaction and pays for the gas fees. This is the entire point. And of course, you have very clear benefits for any user. Imagine you have an agent that uh, has to settle on multiple chains, or has to do payments on multiple chains, and you don't have FLR for gas fee on a particular time period, right? So there is no need for FLR for end users, and it can, of course, deal to a streamlined onboarding, and it's in general a better user experience for dApps end users. Now, what is the main uh, thing, function running behind the scenes and making this work? Well, this is this famous EIP 3009. Um, Bottom line here, because I don't think it's worth spending too much time on it, is that you have two main functions. Well, actually, one for the gasless transaction, which is transferred with authorization. You can see all the parameters of this function, such as the address from, address to, several viewing with the uh, time period for valid after, valid before, a nonsense, and of course the arguments B, R, and S, which are part of this EIP 712 type sign uh, messaging spec, right? So, you can also have this other receive with authorization function implemented that will allow the recipient or any third party to pull the tokens, right? And you can then charge a service fee if you want to do that. One of the things that I want to add here in terms of context is that a few months back, Flare and Network did an amazing job by bringing a great asset, stablecoin, right? Which is USDT zero. And we implemented on the Flare portal gasless transaction. So if you don't know this, right now you can move USDT zero on Flare with no gas fees, which is quite comfortable. You have to do it through the portal though. And today we're gonna mock that up on testnet to run this flow for x402 payments. But the idea is that you can implement this not only for stablecoins, but also for other interesting assets on Flare, such as FXRP. Now, let me move forward here to x402 on Flare, and let me just double check here that we don't have people asking questions. Like I mentioned, I'm going to answer everything at the end. Oh, I see a lot of people uh, saying hi on YouTube. Hello, guys. It's nice to see you all there, and nice to see that you are there supporting us. I really appreciate that. And again, if you're just a normal user and want to understand more of this, today after I show the entire flow, you will be able to literally copy paste these lines of code, and it's going to work for you, and you're gonna feel the power of these payments on Flare. So going back to this gasless flow overview, what we essentially have in this type of services is just a front end. Think about React with useful uh, libraries with Ether.js perhaps being the most famous one. You will build this payload. You will have a wallet signature prompt, and you will then post to the relayer. And don't worry if you don't understand this. I am going to show you on the front end how the experience feels, and you're gonna see like, oh, okay, it's very simple. And then on the back end, you have your relayer with express service probably, and then it will verify the payload and calls this function transfer with authorization and pays the gas on Flare. And then, of course, you have the settlement of the payment. Now, let's move forward to explore again the entire flow now that we understand what is X402, now that we understand what are gasless transactions, um, and what are we going to perform with this client request. So again, we start with a request to a protected resource. The server will return this HTTP 402 with the payment requirements. So you want to ask some information on the web that is paid, right? You have paywalls everywhere on the internet. Think about all these publications in magazines and digital magazines and whatnot. So then in this type of flow, it would require you to pay something natively on the HTTP protocol, and this can settle again on Flare or in any other blockchain. And the payment can be as flexible as stable coins, native tokens, you name it, even meme coins if you want. Hopefully that's not something that we see later. And then the client will sign this EIP 712 authorization, which is an off-chain thing. There is no gas required, right? So the user would is just clicking sign. And then the client resends the request with the payment header containing the signed authorization, and the server will call this function that we're going to explore if we have enough time, which is settle payment on the facilitator contract. Remember, I told you that there is a service handling all of this stuff between the settlement and sending the final response to the server, and that is the facilitator that will execute this transfer with authorization function to transfer the tokens. And then the server will return the requested resource with the payment confirmation. So all of this is what we are going to be exploring. I think that right now we're on time, right? We have a lot of people on the room already, and I want to get our hands dirty and that you guys can follow along. What will you see if you implement this correctly? What you have on the screen. What is it? Is the logs after deploying your first contract for this X402 flow on the Flare network. Now, when it comes to applications, now that we have a deep understanding of the flow, you have to think, where can this go next, right? You are a developer, even if you're not a professional developer, as a vibe coder, I told you, you can implement this already. So then you have to think about, okay, what will I implement as a interesting solution with certain on-chain logic? And here's where things really become more interesting, right? Because you can have all sorts of system with revenue splits, all sorts of system that involves NFTs for anything related to perhaps documents or credits, passes membership. And of course, you will have all these typical flows with escrows and refund, hold some sort of fund and release or return based on some condition, like you would do with an insurance. And of course, anything related to DeFi, right? You can have swaps, so things work more nicely for certain specific type of DeFi users. And you can even have some sort of prepaid credits in which you can convert a payment into some sort of credit on any sort of platform until they're spent. This could be something interesting for e-commerce, for instance. And then one thing that I did that it could be of interest to some of you is, you know, what type of application can I build with this stuff, right? I'm going to show you all the details. You're going to learn how to get started from scratch, have this whole flow working. You already know that you can build things with a more advanced on-chain logic. You already know the flow. You already know that it's cheap. But then what's next? What I did here is just ask to Perplexity, considering a business angle, what would be something that might be worth charging for, right? And it shared some interesting outputs. One of them is that you can have premium Oracle streams in which you will have, uh, micropayments to access proprietary high-value data that can be derived from Flare's unique oracles, and that isn't freely available elsewhere. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you. Off the top of my head, I cannot come up with this kind of case right now, but it's worth thinking about it. The second one is much more interesting because we do have a very advanced DeFi ecosystem, and something that people are asking about is what are the best deal opportunities, right? And there is a lot, and it's going to continuously evolve and it's going to continuously change, right? Incentives move from one place to another, new protocols deploy. So perhaps you can think about a system that monetizes real-time access to yield opportunities and collateral that data from Flare's cross-chain facets using this HTTP native payment, so that you would have, you essentially are thinking about perhaps giving some funds to an agent, and then the agent will get this data, and based on this data, it can execute certain actions to maximize the return on your asset. I think that this is quite clear to understand. And then in the future, I think we will see more developments on the TEE side of things. And you can think about a compute marketplace in which perhaps you can think about, selling verifiable computation results enriched with Flare's Oracle data, and have some sort of system with paper inference through these X402 flows. This is kind of futuristic as well, but I think it's worth considering. And these three were the three main cases that have a clear, strong business case behind. Now, I am not going to talk about F assets because you guys already know the basics on this. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to move forward into um, our documentation, right? So this is the flow that we're going to explore. I am here on the dev hub. Make sure you're obviously following the right link here, dev.flare.network. And then I just click here on FXRP. We have a section for each protocol, such as the FDSO, FDC, FACET, but we also added one for FXRP as this asset continues to expand on system, right? And on Flare as well. We want to have some specific resources for developers to implement solutions. One of them is X402. So most of the content that you guys saw on the presentation comes from this guide. So this is the entire guide that has the code that you need to run, where to fork this, and you will also see what is the code snippet, right? We're going to show you all of this, and probably for your first time of byte coding, you will want to ask for each one of these such that you learn, what is it behind. But in terms of the steps, let's take a quick look here because it's going to be fairly simple and straightforward. There are four steps. One, we're going to deploy some contracts that mock this USDT zero token and the facilitator contract. You're going to type this, and then you're going to get an output that you will need to add here, right? And this is the deployment output that you will expect on your terminal. Then you're going to move forward and you're going to test real quick this EIP 3009 directly because you want to make sure that this gasless flow works properly, right? And what this script is going to do is going to mint and test these tokens if needed, and then create this signed authorization and execute this transfer with authorization function, which is the main function that matters for this gasless flow, and verify this nonce and replay protection. Then you will have to spin up a server, right? A server service for all of this flow to work. And you're going to do that very simply with this line of command. And you will have, you can run this locally and then check out your local host. And you will see what are the endpoints that are exposed, right? So you would have something that's going to be free to query, something that is going to cost zero point 0.1 USDT zero, which has some sort of premium data. We're going to discover what this premium data is. Then you will have a different tiers, right? You maybe you want to have some sort of detailed report, something more expensive, or maybe you just want to check the health status of your endpoint. Again, this is the code, and for this part, and then finally we're gonna run the agent. So the agent, and this is something that I want to emphasize, is just an interactive CLI for making these X402 payments, right? So it's gonna essentially show you these alternatives once we run it, uh, which means what is going to give you the different alternatives for you to interact with it, right? So if you want to fetch some sort of public data, premium data, or the report, or even mint some test tokens. And then it's going to give you the entire output with this example of a payment flow. How does it look like? And that's it. That's pretty much it. So, okay, let's go to the top of this page. All of this is going to be implemented in our hardcard starter kit. So if you have never done this before, you can just type here Flare hard, so hardcard starter. And it should take you to our one of our main kits for building on Flare. And what you will want to do is, of course, utilize this template. You can download this, and you can just open this up on your local environment and start building from there. And it has all the instructions to set up this in 3 steps, which is, of course, you will first clone and install all the dependencies, which is something that I already did. And then you will want to set up your .env file, which is the share with others, right? And you want to adjust it so that you have your own private key. This is your developer private key, not just any private key. And then, of course, you can compile the project and run some tests to make sure that it's working. And then on this starter kit, you will find a bunch of flows for the FDC, for X402, which is what we're going to explore today, and for applications that are already built on Flare, weather insurance, price feeds via the FTSO. We have a bunch of material that is already in here. So you want to make sure that you get started by following these instructions. Now, in my case, of course, since I'm here to show you the entire flow of this X402 uh, payment, I already have my haircut started ready. What you're seeing on the screen is essentially a cursor with the hard hat started already loaded, right? So as you can see here on the left, we have the main folder, Flare Haircut started, and inside we have a bunch of files. What we probably care about today are the scripts folder that are inside the X402, right? And like I mentioned before, this starter kit has a bunch of information about other flows that can be of use, or it might not. And you can then query this with, this agent that you have on the right side and ask questions about what is the code exactly doing? What is the output that I'm seeing? Why am I seeing what I'm seeing, right? Everything. So what I did here is I open up a few terminals and I run each one of the codes. So what I do, and this is like a very simple tip for you to get started, is um, I just go to the main documentation page of the flow that I want to interact with. In this case, it's X402. And remember that I told you there are 4 steps. Well, I got these 4 steps. Here you have another extra line of code because I was testing from another directory. So you can forget about this. Um, but you essentially have the 4 steps, right? You have the steps of deploy your contracts. You will have the step of testing this EIP. You will have the line of code that you will need to start your server, and then you will have the agent flow so that you can interact with it. So what I do is I just go to the developer hub, copy paste the relevant lines of code, then open the hardware starter kit on my cursor, and then I just open a terminal and run each one of the lines of code. And that's precisely what I did here. So let's take a deeper look. This is my terminal, right? You should probably make sure that you put a name to each one of your terminals so you do not get confused while running the flow. So let me see if I can actually do this. I'm going to rename this terminal. This terminal, what it's doing is deploying the contracts, right? So this is deploy contract. Okay, this is the first terminal that I'm going to open up. If you want to open a new terminal, just click here. It's fairly simple. And by the way, on the top, what you can see is the scripts that I'm going to be utilizing. And I already run the demo, so I already have loaded up here after uh, running the server. I already have the front end, but we're going to interact with this within a few seconds. Right now, I just want to focus on what is the expected output and the config that we need to provide in our .env file. So the piece of code that you want to run is yarn hardcat run scripts x402 deploy.ts, and you want to do this on the custom 2 network, right? This is the part that I'm highlighting here because you want to run everything on testnet. What are the logs? Well, first you will have 2 logs associated to a warning from Tenderly. You can completely ignore that. And then the relevant information starts. We have some logs with the X402 demo, and we have the address from the deployer wallet. So this is something that I got from providing my private key on the .env file. This is the thing that you do not want to expose. But then the important part is that it's going to deploy this mock USDT0. It's going to give you the address, and it's going to give you also the address for the facilitator, which is this. And it's going to show you a summary of the deployment, the payee address as well, the facilitator, the contract, and then is prompting you to follow this instruction here, which is that you need to add certain information for your .env file. Now, here it is the information that you need to add, and now you might be wondering where, right? Remember, the first thing that you want to do once you open up your Flare Cardcat starter kit is to copy a .env file and provide your private key. Now, if you do this, this is the type of file that you will see. It has your API, it has a bunch of API keys so that you do not have to worry about anything else. And here's the private key that you have to input. Now, if you copy paste that, I do not recommend doing that. This is the one that is like kind of public in the sense that it's on the templates everywhere. So, you can rely on this, but it is a risky move. And you would never interact with this on mainnet. So here you would input your private key, not this one. And then, you will have a bunch of other URLs that are relevant for the RPCs and whatnot, WebSockets, whatever. You don't have to worry about any of that. You just have to make sure that the information that you have here for x402 matches what is here. I think that in my case, since I'm deploying this more than one time, it actually doesn't match, but it's okay. I already tested, it works. And that's it for the first time, for the first step. You will see a bunch of warnings here on the logs of my terminal, and this is because I'm running this command multiple times. So again, I'm going to just to uh, just to reiterate, I didn't want to do this. I mean, I was testing this before the workshop, and I didn't want it to do this live and waste this amount of time, right? I wanted to make sure that it works properly, but if you want to do it again, you can just do that, right? You can run again, everything is going to work, and the warnings that you will get aside from the tenderly stuff is just the fact that you have already verified this contract. And of course, I have already deployed this, so it makes sense. Um, okay, so we did the first step. What is the second step? Let me check out the lines of code from the guide. I need to test that the EIP 3009 actually works, and this is the command, right? So I am just going to open up a new terminal. In my case, like I said before, I already did this. Let me see where I did this. I think this is the right terminal. Let's see. Yeah, the logs looks similar, and it says the EIP 3009 test complete. So this must be the right one. But just in case we run it again, you can clear everything from your terminal and run it again if you want. Um, like I mentioned, I don't want to waste too much time into running this stuff, but I do want to show you the logs because this is giving you the information that you need for understanding the X402 flow and the test that needs to be done before deploying this, right? So it's giving you the signer, the recipient, and the token address, then the token and the chain ID with the initial balance. So it's minting a certain amount. You can obviously configure this on your script to change this. And then you see the information about this EIP 3009 authorization, right? It has all of these parameters that I already explained it before when we were analyzing this EIP function. And then you have the parameters related to the BRS signature. And yeah, then it's running the test essentially for the nonce protection as well. And then you have the final balances on each relevant address. And that's it. Now, I should also rename this probably to the test EIP. So let's do that. Let's just rename this test EIP 3009. And then comes the fun part. For me, the fun part is running the server, right? So here, the line of code that you want to put is npx ts node scripts x402 server.ts, and it's going to spin up the service. And what is going to happen is it's going to start a front end, and this front end is located here. You can follow this link. In my case, I'm going to show you within 1 second. And again, it's going to give you the relevant address, token, facilitator, the payee, and the endpoints. This is the important thing for this flow, right? Because you're going to interact with it once you run the AI agent or the bot. Okay, so yeah, what you can see here is just outputs from the interactions because I've been testing it. And like I mentioned before, the interesting part is on what you will see on your front end. So let me show you real quick this demo here. What you can see is my local host with this service already spin up. I already connected my MetaMask wallet, which is only for developer purposes. Remember not to use real tokens here. And then I have some information about the backend URL and the token address, and I can just click here and check balance, right? And it's going to give me here the status, balance. This is the amount of mock USDT0 that I have. And I can click, for instance, on mint test tokens. And what it's going to do is going to prompt this transaction. Notice that there is a transaction fee here. I'm signing here on my MetaMask wallet, and I'm making test token just for testing purposes. And I get the response from from the server. And then comes the interesting part. I can try to interact with some of these available resources. So I can just uh, ask the free endpoint to fetch this information. And I get some output, and then I can, pay and fetch. So this is the part in which we have the transfer with authorization implementation so that you do not spend any gas, right? You can see here, transfer with authorization. In this case, I'm doing this from the public dev to the public dev, doesn't matter. You can, you have to make sure that your wallet address are the ones that you want in the flow, and that's it. And I'm just going to confirm here. I'm not paying any gas. And as you can see here on the status, it changed and it's now submitting payment and fetching the resources. And I did it, right? So what is the response after this X402 interaction via this front end? So I have some information with the message. I have premium data access successfully. What is the data? It's giving me the flare price. I don't know if this is the correct flare price, by the way. This can be whatever information. And I have a secret information here, which is like, this is premium content only available after payments. Of course, this is all for testing and educational purposes, so we didn't go forward in the sense of adding some complex data or content that you might want to access. In the real life, you probably want to do something more interesting. And let's go again now and ask for this API report request. Again, we see this transfer with authorization. We just confirmed here, and it is submitting the payment and fetching this resource. Once it's done, I can see some specific information with perhaps some technical analysis about the market or whatever, right? And you can see here the X402 payments response as well with the ID, the transaction hash, which you can verify on the custom 2 Explorer, and the status of the settlement. So this would almost complete the entire flow. However, there is one final part now that we have enabled and interacted with this server, which is what are we going to do with the agent piece? And for that, the last piece of code to run the entire flow is running the agent, right? npx ts slash dash no, sorry, scripts x402 agent.ts. So you do that, and what will happen once you do that, as I did here on my terminal, and again, you should put the correct name here, just to not forget, is going to provide a few logs with the balance that you have and the relevant addresses. So double check this information. And then it's giving you some commands, right? So now you're interacting with the agent. You can interact via the CLI, and the agent will take care of, interacting with the service. I already did this a couple of times to test that everything is working correctly with the different alternatives, but I'm going to do it one more time. So let's assume that I want to fetch this free you know, accessible resource. And I get it, right? I get the response instantly. I get the timestamp, and then it prompts again for the available commands. Let's say I want to fetch this premium content. It is now enabling the agent to interact with it and perform the payment. And I've been asked if I want to proceed, right? Do you want to authorize this payment? Yes or no? That's the point. Probably in a realistic environment, you will have some guardrails for your agent and some sort of explicit instructions for what you want to enable and pay and what you do not want to enable in any case, and then move forward from there. And it worked. We have again the message, the data that is exclusive right after this X402 payment was processed, and then the details of the payment as well. And I think that with this, I can also do other all sorts of things, right? I can check the balance, I can do test tokens, whatever, right? You would obviously see that after performing some of these interactions, your balance is going to decrease. And then that's it. I'm going to select exit here to finish this flow, and it says goodbye, and that's it essentially. We run the entire flow, and with this, I think we're in a good position to, finalize this workshop. But just in case you did not understood all of this stuff, because there is a few scripts involved and whatnot, you can just always ask Cursor, and you can do this for free. It's not going to cost you anything. I'm gonna just type here, please explain to me this X402 in detail with the code, right? And once you do this, the agent on Cursor now, it is not the agent of Flare, is thinking about giving you all of these details and what's best. And so it's explaining you what is X402. It is explaining the flow with the smart contract, the functionalities, right? The relevant pieces with the for the EIP, just like I explained before. It's giving you the key points, then it's moving forward, giving you the relevant parameters and the internal transfer logic that is triggered on this flow. And then it's moving forward and explaining the next contract, which is the X402 facilitator, which is the payment settlement contract, right? So you have absolutely all the details here with the code and the flow explained it step by step. And I think that you certainly will want to leverage this information. Now, I think we are on time now, and what I want to do to finalize this, I guess that I should show you the code again. Well, not again, for the first time, for you to take this quiz. So right now, if you scan this QR code, you will access some questions that are very easy to answer if you pay attention to this workshop. It's really not technical. Anyone can do it, and you can win some exclusive merch. And with this, I think we are fine to end this uh, good session. And I'm just going to answer one of the questions that I have here on YouTube. Thank you for asking this. And the question is, if you're always going to have 100 billion tokens out, I'm assuming this is related to the flow, right? To set the amount, you can do that on the contract and you can change that, right? But again, this is the test flow for this X402 payment with this mock USDT zero, right? Nothing is like real tokens here. Just want to clarify that. So, okay, guys, it's been a wonderful session. Make sure to watch the replay, share it with others, participate and join the community, and take the quiz. It's a nice opportunity to get merch that is otherwise paid. You can get it for free. So